Lambton heritage can be expressed visually in many forms, whether it be in the form of art through drawings, in the form of artifacts left over from the past, in the form of words, as verse or as prose. But our heritage can also be remembered through plaques. And there are probably close to 50 plaques spread across Lambton County. I'm going to point out just 10 of them for you here. First, the one reflecting the incident furthest from our past, the one about the voyage of the Griffin in 1679. The Griffin was the first ship to sail up the St. Clair River and into Lake Huron. It was captained by Le Sieur de la Salle, René Cavalier, and on board was Father Hennepin, who recorded much of the voyage. There was also a commune in Lambton County, the first anywhere in Canada. In 1829, Henry Jones came across with a group of emigrants and established a property on 1,000 acres, which included a communal building for cooking, for lessons, for entertainment, and separate living quarters. This was fine for quite a while, but when the main building burned down, many of the individuals found they could have property on their own and decided to leave and settle separately, and the tuna Maxwell never really lasted that long. Froom and Field Telford, two brothers who came over from England in 1832, were one of the first settlers in Moore Township. Froom Telford remained in Canada while Field returned. After returning to England, Field became a well-known portrait painter. Froom remained in Lambton County, established the town of Froomfield, and became the superintendent of Indians for many years, and was so well liked that after he returned to England, the Indians continued to hold a feast each year in honor of Froom Telford. Victoria Hall in Petrolia was built in 1889 at the height of the oil boom, when the town of Petrolia was one of the wealthiest towns in Canada. It was built as a town hall, municipal office, courtroom, and fire hall. The Grand Theatre would seat 1,000 people. Just celebrating its 100th anniversary, a fire struck in January 1989, gutting the building. But it was rebuilt and still stands in Petrolia, now the home of the Victoria Playhouse Petrolia and the home of an active summer season of plays. Born in Courtright, Stuart James lived all his life in that small town along the St. Clair River, where this monument, this plaque, has been erected. Stuart James was perhaps the most famous magician, even though he never really performed magic tricks. What he did do was invent magic tricks. And he did most of them at his home along the river by the name of Aberystwyth, a home named after the town in which his grandfather lived in Wales before coming to Canada. Stuart James, right up until the end of his life, right up until the 1980s, still invented tricks, inviting magicians, to come to his home each year on Halloween to bid on new tricks that he'd invented. Alexander Mackenzie, born in Scotland, came to Canada in 1842, first to the area around Kingston, and later, at the request of one of his brothers, he came down to the Sarnia area, or Port Sarnia as it was known at the time. He was an active man, built a lot of homes here, and eventually got involved in politics and became Prime Minister of Canada, Canada's second Prime Minister from 1873 to 1878, and Canada's first Liberal Prime Minister. He's buried now in the cemetery here in Sarnia, along with many of his family. Alexander Mackenzie. We must remember, he was one of the most important persons in Lambton County, eventually becoming Prime Minister, as I noted before. Forest, small town of Forest, was first come into place in 1858 as indicated by this sign. Population of over 750, it became incorporated as a village. But part of that population was people who'd been coming through on the train and were convinced to get off the train, to stop for an hour or two so they could be counted as part of the population and qualify Forest as a town. There's the old railway station, which is still used as the library, and there's a railway car there as well, indicating that Forest was begun as a railway town. The first oil wells in Canada came through in the Oil Springs area. This plaque honors the site of the first oil well, the gusher of a man named Shaw. At one time, there were 3-pole derricks and eventually jerker rod lines all across the area around Oil Springs, and later the area around Petrolia. St. Clair Tunnel. In 1889, a tunnel built under the river to help to move goods back and forth from Canada to the United States. There are 2 plaques here, both near the St. Clair Tunnel entrance here in Ontario. Trains that used to run through there, one of them the St. Clair Tunnel Company train. Then we go to a different mode of transport, the plank road, and its real purpose, as indicated by this sign, was to move oil from the oil fields up to Sarnia where it could be processed. These 2 signs were originally placed at both ends of the plank road. The one on the right is still here, the one on the left, somebody took off the building, but we don't know who. And as indicated here, there were toll gates along the plank road when it first came into place, and right up until the 1920s. While it is not a plaque, I thought it fitting to end with something that has writing on it and is there on a permanent basis. This is the Secret Bench of Knowledge, a bronze sculpture located outside the downtown Sarnia Library branch. It was created by Canadian artist Lee Vivo of Kleinburg, Ontario, and depicts a young boy and girl sitting on a park bench, the boy whispering into the girl's ears. The bench includes scores of messages relaying hopes and dreams of various writers, including school children. Some prayers for world peace, others for domestic tranquility. There is even a message from a young blind boy from Alberta, inscribed in Braille. The Sarnia Public Library and Art Gallery purchased the Secret Bench in 1990, and it represents an especially good value as an artistic acquisition and something that you can only find here in Sarnia.